There's not hardly anything where you always feel like you're right. Feelings are fickle, but you show up because of discipline. You show up because of consistency. Dude, I'm the coach. I don't feel like being here every day, right? And I love this sport. This is my favorite definition of a coach. A person who takes someone from where they currently are to where they want or need to go. Now, I'm sure there's people in Oklahoma that can spell. I'm not one of them. Okay, I'm a real life thesaurus.
Today, we have Chad Parks, the Topeka Area Director for FCA, Fellowship of Christian Athletes. Let's go.
Let's go. Thanks for having me. Appreciate
Welcome to the podcast, man. Glad to have you.
Give us a little bit about Chad. Who's Chad Parks?
Oh, man. So I'm an Okie. I grew up in Oklahoma.
Oh, okay.
And,
nice. I thought you meant like Oakland, Topeka.
Yeah.
Not
that,
quite.
But
Boomer Sooner.
Yeah, Boomer Sooner, big time. Love Sooners. But yeah, I'm an Okie. I ended up going to college in Kansas. So I wrestled at Labette and Fort Hays State. And then met a Topeka girl, my wife, Lori, and she played softball out there. And then we ended up coming back to Topeka. And so this has been home now for 23, 24 years.
Wow.
Topeka just suckers you in and you just never leave.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
It's
cool.
awesome.
You said you wrestled a little bit. You're being modest. Give it to us. You wrestled at Fort Hays. You're a big deal.
Yeah. So my dad's a National Hall of Fame wrestling coach in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Wow.
Coached for 30-some years. I started, I don't know when I started wrestling, when I could walk, basically. Yeah. So I think I was probably 3 or 4 when I started wrestling. Wrestled all the way through high school, wrestled 5 years of college. I was on one of those special college programs where you finish a 4-year degree in 6 years. So one of those things.
They're called doctors.
Yeah, that's right. Except I didn't get a doctorate. But so now I wrestled at 3 colleges. So I actually wrestled at Missouri Valley College. We won a national championship when I was there. And the coach that recruited me had left. I decided to transfer, so went to Labette here in Kansas. That time, one of the top JUCOs in the nation. Lots of Oklahoma kids would go wrestle there. So went down, wrestled there, and then out at Fort Hays State. Ended up being a college All-American. Got to have some great experiences wrestling in college. And then as soon as I was done, went directly into coaching. Yeah, pretty much knew, being around my dad, being around some great coaches, that's what I wanted to do. So wrestling has been, I don't know, just I would say like a part of my life, but it's been a huge part of my life since
in the
blood. I can remember. Yeah, it's in the blood.
He's been grappling before he could walk.
Yeah,
that's cool.
That's right.
Really
it's
cool.
Grappling, right? That's a thing.
Yeah.
So I'm not an idiot. I know.
So he was also your PE teacher.
He was my physical education coach.
High school, right?
In
Middle
8th
school.
grade.
Yeah,
8th grade.
8th grade.
I have Chad Parks. Chad Parks is the reason I'm the athlete I am today.
They have this
That's
sculpted physique.
This sculpted physique.
Yeah. We got Adonis right here next to me.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. So what was it like? So when you moved here, did you start teaching and coaching? Is that kind of what you were doing?
Yeah. So when I very first came here, and it's funny, I wanted to coach in college, and I had stayed in coaching college for a year at Hayes. And my wife had some opportunities as well. She was a college softball player. She did not want to coach in college. So we both had PE degrees, trying to decide where we're going to go. Knew it probably needed to be a city in order, because if you know anything about PE teachers, like they don't leave. So those jobs don't open up very much.
Yeah.
Right? So like, okay, we're gonna have to be in a big city with a lot of schools. And so I would get an offer somewhere, but there would be nothing for her, or vice versa.
Right.
So we ended up having opportunities here. So when we very first came to Topeka, we were in 501. So my wife taught at Topeka High, and then she was a coach at Topeka High. And then I taught at Jardine Middle School and was coaching there and at Topeka High. So I was at Jardine for 3 years. You don't know better whenever you're just coming out of college. So they're like, okay, you are the head 8th grade football coach. And I had a football background. My dad coached football as well. But like, you're the head 8th grade football coach. You're the head middle school wrestling coach. And that was the last year they had middle school wrestling in 501. You're the head track coach. You're running your own program before school. And I was the head assistant at Topeka High. So did that for 3 years.
They just make you think this is normal. Everyone does this.
That's exactly. I literally thought this is normal. And it was just like doing something all day
Everything's
long,
fine. The building's on fire. Everything's fine.
Oof.
Yeah. So, and then when I came out to Shawnee Heights and had the opportunity to take over as the head high school coach at Heights, I was the head middle school. So I was a middle school PE teacher, head middle school football coach, and then high school wrestling coach. But I was like, I'm doing nothing in the spring. Like, I understand now.
Yeah.
I'm not a rookie anymore.
I'm allowed to say no.
That's right.
Yeah. Wow. What was it like coaching wrestling for how long were you doing that?
So I did that 3 years, and then I just finished my 20th season as the head wrestling coach at Shawnee Heights.
Dang.
And I'm the head girls and boys coach there. Absolutely love it. Like, it is one of my greatest passions.
Wow.
It's one of those things that, it's like God's given us all different gifts and abilities. And that's one of the things that just lights my fire. You know, for me, I feel like it's sort of part of the ministry. It's one of those things, building relationships. And of course, I love the sport of wrestling, right?
Sure.
But like building relationships with my coaches, building relationships with our athletes, helping them develop into the best people they can possibly be. Not just the best wrestlers. Of course, we want them to be great wrestlers, but help them develop in every area of life. It's been huge. So it's one that, like, when I wake up, I'm often thinking about wrestling or coaching. When I go to bed, I'm often thinking about wrestling or coaching. And I like it a lot because there's never a point where it's like I have this thing figured out. Every team's a little different. Individuals are different. And so there's always a challenge of like, how do I create the greatest culture? How do I create, technically, like, what moves are best for this group? What drills are best for this group? So I love coaching overall. Like, I coach my son's flag football team. I enjoy that. Right?
Nice.
So just coaching is a really, really fun thing to me.
I have so much respect for you in that realm, because there's so many teachers that they teach to coach. And, some of those coaches, like, you just like the sport, get to screw around with, a bunch of high school kids or whatever, it's just kind of a jock grown up. But you truly embody, like, you teach to coach, but coaching's your ministry. Yeah. And it's such a cool, like, you can just see that in the culture you create, the buy-in from the athletes that, you guys have so many different, like, creeds and mottos that you guys recite at the end of the practices. Walk us through some of that, because I think that really speaks to the culture you've built over 20 years. Yeah.
So I think culture is one of the most important things you can have, right? So whether that is if you're the CEO of a company, if you're a coach, whatever it is, right? So if you're a pastor, like, you want to have a great culture. Right. And so for me, like, something I've done over the years is read a lot, right? Listen to a lot of podcasts, listen to a lot of books, and read a lot of books. But do I want to, or have I studied some of the greatest coaches? Absolutely. And I've been blessed to be directly under some great coaches, study some good coaches, go to clinics, conferences. But I also like to look outside of the coaching realm, right? So I'm going to read a book like, hey, how did the CEO of Chick-fil-A make that one of the best organizations? How did Cody Foster make Advisors one of the best organizations? Who can I study? And what principles of success can we take and utilize, right? So when it comes to some of the mottos and things that we have, I would say the very first one is TCOB, just take care of business. And I know Elvis had TCB, but it's so funny because I'll have people, if you see TCOB wrestling around here especially, but in a lot of places, people know, like, that's Shawnee Heights Wrestling.
Yeah. Oh, really?
It's been a brand for a long time.
Wow, that's cool.
It's not just a brand. Like, there's so much buy-in around that. Wow. Like, these wrestlers, when they're out in college, after they're done with your program, they get it all tatted up on them. Yeah. Wow. Like, it's just like a life that's cool. Motto for these guys.
It becomes like a mindset or a motto for us, kind of a lifestyle. But I actually got that one from one of my college wrestling coaches. So when I was at Labette, one of the greatest coaches that I've ever been around, Coach Thompson, he's amazing. He's in a couple different wrestling Hall of Fames and was a good wrestler, an incredible coach, a true mentor, almost like a father figure for the wrestlers, but that was our motto there, TCOB. And so we bought in. So whenever I became a head coach, I was like, that's what we're doing. We're, utilizing it. And really, it's just taking care of business in every area. So we want to take care of business on the wrestling mats, off the wrestling mats, in the classroom, in your personal life. And it's an easy thing to say, like, and do we have some rules, policies, procedures? Yes. But overall, like, if you're TCOB and if you're taking care of business in every area, then you know that you're doing the right thing. Right. So we can have a discussion with the wrestler who's maybe not doing well academically. Hey, are you TCOB in the classroom? Because I see you have 3 different assignments missing right now in this class, and that's why you have a D. And they could be like, no, I'm not, coach, right? And then we can have that discussion. So that's a big one for us. Another one for us is GET, which is gratitude, effort, and toughness. So, and we use it in lots of ways, but things like we don't have to, go to practice on Monday. I get to go to practice on Monday. Right. Okay. And it applies to life, right? I don't have to go to work. I get to go to work. Yeah. I don't have to lift weights. I get to lift weights. And then we go in and then we break it down. We talk about the power of gratitude, and not in a way of like, this sort of modern type enlightenment gratitude, like being true, like look at like the neuroscience of gratitude. Biblically, 157 times in the Bible, it talks about Thanksgiving, right? So we talk about that and do a lot of mindset stuff around gratitude, and then what are actual gratitude practices, and then effort. Wrestling is just a tough sport. Yeah. Like everything about it. Cleaning the mats is tough. Like there's nothing about it that doesn't require a lot of effort. So we discussed that a lot. And I remember something my dad always said working, or growing up, he was a super hard worker. And I think I started mowing. So I started mowing when I was 9 years old. I wanted to go to my first overnight wrestling camp. And my dad was like, okay, you can go, but you got to pay for it. And our high school principal lived across the street. And so I walked over and I said, can I mow your yard this summer? And I want to go to this camp. Would you be willing to front me the money? And she said yes. So I went to this camp. And what was hard is then you mowed the rest of the summer and never got to see the money because But my brother has some yards too. So by the time I was a sixth grader, I had like 20 yards. When I graduated high school, I had like 35 yards. So I would leave practice, or in the summer, I'd be like mowing all day long. Before I could drive, my dad would like just drop me off on a block with a mower and a weed eater. Back then, we didn't even have blowers. They had like a broom,
Yeah.
So I'd do, and he painted houses. And then when I was down mowing for the day, I would go paint with them.
Wow.
So for me, like my breaks were getting to go to wrestling practice, getting to go to baseball practice. So hard work has just been a part of our family and our lifestyle. And so that effort piece, it just, and I ran a podcast for quite a while and I've been blessed to talk to some super high level people. And, you can
add us to the tally.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we want to be efficient in everything we do. I 100% believe in efficiency. And I don't believe in doing something just because that's the way it's always been done. We should look and explore what's a better way to do it. But like, no matter who you talk to, people that are highly successsul have put in work.
Right.
There's just like no way around that.
Yeah,
right?
there is. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the toughness piece, we go in and we talk about toughness and, we got to be physically tough. And so I often tell my wrestlers like, hey, you're just not that good looking. So there's no reason when you shoot in to not, to turn your head. Sometimes people
you're
are afraid
not saving anything.
Yeah. Sometimes people aren't afraid to they are afraid to get hit in the face, right?
Right.
We cannot be afraid to get hit in the face. And I tell them, try to apply it to life too. Like, hey, man, life's going to throw some things at you. And you got to be willing to jump in there and like try to take those things on. So we try to teach those lessons. But then also, toughness isn't just physical, emotional toughness. Yeah. So we talk about mental toughness as well. And that just kind of comes with the sport. And then emotional toughness. And I think the number one thing we talk about that is like, hey, what emotion is the strongest? And I always ask my kids that, and they'll be like, throwing out different emotions, anger, fear, all these things. And then love will always come up and tell them love is the strongest emotion, right? So as Christ followers, we know like Jesus literally died for us on the cross because he loves us, right? Love is the strongest emotion. Like if you love somebody or if as a parent, when you love your children, like you'll do anything for them type thing, right? So we want to utilize that. We want to love one another. And love's not soft. Love's not like all cotton candy, man.
Right.
And, love. And so if I have a 2-year-old and they run out in the street, I might, yell at them, hey, get out of the street or whatever, right? I'm gonna have to spank their bottom, and not because I hate them, it's because I love them and I don't want them to get hit by a car, right?
Right.
And the reason why we have guardrails in life. So love is helping people get where they need to go. And sometimes that's a little bit harder. Sometimes it's softer. Sometimes it's a hug or an arm around the shoulder or just sitting with somebody who's upset, right? And other times it's pouring into them, and other times it's kind of helping guide them. So we talk about that. And then the last thing with the emotional piece is not going it alone. Like a lot of people just become an island emotionally, and they're realizing like you need a support system. So you need to be able to trust and rely on. So those are the things that we teach when we talk about GET. And then this year, one that we focused on a lot was Win the Day. And then the WIN stands for What's Important Now. And so whenever we are forecasting and thinking about the future, and especially in sport, we worry about outcomes so much, and that causes a lot of pressure and nerves. When we're doing that, let's just come back to what's important now. Like, what can we actually do? What's the next action step? How can we be where our feet are? So that was something we focused a lot on this year.
That's great. How do you create buy-in with kids who, I don't know, they maybe aren't as committed, and just are there on the team?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's funny because I believe in transformational coaching, right? I want to make sure that we're helping people transform their lives, not transactional, not what can I get out of you or from you,
Right.
But when I very first started coaching, I don't think I was a transactional coach, but I was a much different coach. And I was very intense. I just came from wrestling in college and more old school mindset. And I remember the very first year I was coaching at Shawnee Heights as the head coach, specifically having this one young man in the room. And we worked hard. Like when I look back, I'm like, I don't know how. Like it was like a break you practice every single day. It was not intelligent. That's just kind of how we trained back then. And but I remember having this young man in the room who did not work hard. Was always kind of messing around, not working hard. And I'd get so frustrated. And I just like, I don't understand in my own mind. I'm like, I don't know how you can be on a team and like not want to be good. How can you not want to try to be a state champion or be the varsity guy or whatever? And I had a couple different conversations with him. And the good thing is, as the year went on, he started to kind of buy in and work harder. And he was like a third string type guy. But anyway, one day we were talking and I was asking him, the team, talking to some of the guys about their goals. And he was like, Coach, I just want to be on the team. I'm just happy to be here. And I remember laying in bed and thinking, being like, I don't understand that. And then all of a sudden it kind of hit me like, wait a minute. Like, it's better that he's here than out on the street somewhere or out messing around, getting in trouble. And then just realizing like, okay, this is not college wrestling. This is high school wrestling. And some of these kids just want to be with friends. They want to have fun. They just want to have a place where they can hang out. If we can inspire them and help them get better along the way, that is awesome. And that's one of the goals. And we need those kind of kids in the room, right? And I often say like, and this goes with every sport, but our sport especially, or this is where I focus on, but I just say a lot of times that kid needs wrestling more than wrestling needs him.
Yeah, it's so good.
And so when we're working with the kids, they're just kind of there and maybe like they're not the big time wrestler, or maybe they're third string and they don't even care. They're just kind of having fun. I'm like, hey, as long as you are working hard in here and you're trying to get better and you're helping your teammates, that's a great thing. Now, if not, then we're going to have a conversation like, hey, buddy, you got to pick it up because I want you to help your teammate get better too. But I think that we've coached long, and culture changes all the time, and you can't get lax because, just a few things can allow it to slip. But overall, I think we've built a strong enough culture that when you walk in as a freshman and you see what the juniors and seniors are doing, you just kind of follow suit.
Yeah.
And then you don't really know
it's like, this is
way.
what we do here.
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
And then we've been real blessed to have some older athletes, and I empower them, right? I believe that player-led teams are stronger than coach-led teams. So my job is not just to create followers. Like, we want to create leaders who can then help create leaders. So sometimes I'll have to go and remind them that, hey, listen, I want you to go talk to so-and-so, or remember, like, I want you to step up in this area. And then they get to go and have these conversations. But yeah, it becomes that's what we do here. Yeah. And nobody knows any different. And when you're a junior or senior and you see that freshman not doing that, you go have that conversation with them. Like, hey, that's not how we act in the room, or this is what we do in the room.
Yeah. It's like you're not even giving the option to not buy in. It's 100%. Like, hey, this is what we do here. There's no other option.
Yeah. Right. It's not, it really is.
Yeah. It's not like, hey, would you like to do this and this? It's like, no. If you're on the team, this is what it looks like to be on the team.
Yeah.
Yeah. How have you seen, I love the idea, especially like, a lot of these kids might not play college, so they're really getting something else out of this to take with them. And so being developed for all of life. How have you seen that happen? Like, what about wrestling transfers into the rest of life and increases them as a leader, as a person?
Yeah, good. So, and it's one of those things too, I think you have to be intentional as a coach about teaching those things, right? It's like, if I show you a double leg takedown, how does that apply to life?
Right.
Okay. Now, maybe you got to defend yourself at some point or protect somebody else or something. Or
job interview.
Yeah, job interview.
Take down the other candidate.
But so for the most part, I think we make sure we try to point those things out.
So you're drawing parallels. Hey, this is how this applies to other areas of your life. Yeah. Like, here's why what we're doing matters outside of wrestling. So you're saying that.
Yeah, we literally say it.
Cool.
So I want them to know, ask them like, hey, how many of you feel like, and be 100% honest, how many of you feel like being at practice every single day? Of course, you get a couple kids to be like, raise your hand. I'm like, dude, I'm the coach. I don't feel like being here every day, right? And I love this sport. There's not hardly anything where you always feel like, right? Feelings are fickle. But you show up because of discipline. You show up because of consistency. And so I tell them, when you're in a regular job one day, even if it's a job you love, sometimes, like on a Monday, you're like, dude, I'm fired up to go to work. Sometimes you're like, I do not want to go to work. Mm-hmm. Well, you don't just stay home and sleep in, because you look back and like the days you didn't want to go to practice, but you still showed up, you realize like that's just the kind of person I am. Yep. I think James Clear said it, but like every time that you do something, you're making a decision for the kind of person you want to be. Right. Yeah. It's a vote for the kind of person you want to be. So that's what we tell them. Like every time you're showing up for practice, it's the vote for the kind of person you want to be. Every time we come down here, we lift weights in the weight room. It's the same thing. Every time I come and work hard in wrestling practice, it's the same thing. And the cool thing is, like, when you look at that, and I just kind of like make that like a little micro piece of that, how many times you not feel like doing something, but once you start, now you feel like doing it. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Like a lot of times, like
the feelings follow.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Right. So your physiology changes your psychology. Yeah. So there's a lot of times that I work out almost every day, but like I don't necessarily feel like working out. Once I start working out and I get warmed up, I'm going, now I'm in it. And then on those days when you're done, you almost feel a little more like proud. You're just
Yeah,
man, I did it.
100%. Yeah.
I always say when gains are made on your worst workout days, because those are the days you don't want to be there.
100%.
And if you only worked out on days that you wanted to work out, you wouldn't get any bigger or any smaller depending on what you're doing. But it's the days where it's like, I don't think that was a great workout. I didn't have a good attitude, didn't want to be here, but I showed up. Yeah. Those are the days where you're making progress.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, they say that even within a good workout, the most gain is when you're like really pushing it the hardest, like on your 10th rep, that's the one that matters the most, in terms of like muscle and things like that. So yeah, that's cool.
So you've coached a ton of people over your 23 years of coaching, football, wrestling, all in between. Who are some of the top athletes that you've coached?
LeBron James.
Yeah, LeBron. So I didn't want anybody to know, but LeBron was okay.
It's the Coach P product.
So no, I would say I'd probably look at like all the Arm Rooster brothers.
Yes, prime specimen of athleticism right here.
That's good. That's funny.
Yeah. No, so I would say, if we just look at like success, and success comes in many forms, but Austin Willis played football for me and then wrestled for me, and just talk about a freak athlete. So wrestling, and especially guys wrestling, now girls wrestling is because it's newer, right? So you could wrestle for a couple years in girls and develop and get really good. But like boys, a lot of these guys have wrestled since they were 5, 6, 7 years old. So Austin didn't start wrestling until high school. We could not he played football for me in middle school. We tried to get him to go out for middle school wrestling. He wouldn't. High school, he came out and he ended up being a 4-time state placer. So he places in state his very first year.
Wow.
So 4-time state placer, had over 100 wins and over 100 pins in high school.
Wow.
And then he goes on to play college football. So went to Emporia State University, went there for a track scholarship, walked on football, played for 2 years, got, a little bit of special teams time. And I remember he called me and just was like, hey, coach, I don't think I'm ever going to really step on the field as a starter. I think I want to transfer. Can you help me? So I was like, I'm going to start reaching out to people I know. And I started reaching out to some people. 2 days later, he calls me back and says, never mind, I'm staying. I was like, well, what happened? So, well, one of our starting slot backs just transferred. Another guy got hurt yesterday at practice towards ACL. He's out. Coach called me in, said, you're going to be the guy. That year, he ends up being an All-American.
Wow.
So he has a great junior year, great senior year. And so Austin is 5'9", 170, 175 pounds. Can absolutely fly. So he does his pro day there at Emporia State. And he also won. They have like a strongest athlete of the, strongest pound for pound athlete, strongest athlete of the year award. He won it. So at 175 pounds, he was benching over 4. He was squatting 600 something.
Dang.
Freak. So
wow.
He ends up running a 4.29 at his pro day. And so they invited him to KU's pro day because there'd be a lot more scouts there. So he goes to KU's pro day. That evening, he calls me and he says, hey, coach, I got some people talking to me. And I said, what'd you run? He goes, I don't know. I said, what do you mean I don't know? He's like, I don't know this time. He goes, I ran. And all I know is when I looked up, people were clapping. And then there were like a bunch of scouts around me talking to me. I never actually saw what it was. So he ended up playing for the Raiders for a little bit. Playing for the Bills, the Detroit Lions. So that's one. And then we got to look at Wyatt Hubert. So his brother Austin was an incredible athlete too and played for Washburn. And then Wyatt ended up being a star for K-State and then made it to the Bengals for a little bit. So those are guys that made it to the pros. Yeah. And, so there were lots of great people that coached them, had a hand in that. Yeah. So it's really cool. And then, for athletes, Tanner Gardner. So when I student taught at Shawnee Heights before I was at Jardine and Topeka High. And I met Tanner, was helping coach, and then I became like a private coach for Tanner. So even while I was coaching at Topeka High, we would train in the off season. He trained lots of places, but he ended up being a multi-time All-American for Stanford University.
Oh, wow.
I think he's still the number one. I think he's won more matches than any other wrestler in the Pac-12.
Wow.
So
that's wild.
Yeah. So, and we've had a lot of great athletes over the years. I've had an opportunity to at least have like a little part.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's super cool.
Yeah.
So you've been for over 2 decades coaching mostly middle school, right?
Coaching high school. I taught middle school.
Okay, you taught middle school. Okay, so coaching high school. How have you seen in the 20 years that generation change? Like the kids coming through your program, and then kind of as like a sub question, what would you say are some of the biggest challenges high school students are facing right now?
Good questions. So the changes I've seen, and it's funny because you'll hear people, and I think every generation has done this forever, right? You're like, oh, this next generation is lost.
Right,
These guys don't work hard.
This next generation's soft.
Yeah. And I remember like I read a thing and it was talking about that. I think it used those exact words, talking about this next generation, soft and lazy and all that. And then like the writing actually came from like the 1920s.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So when you read it, like I was like thinking, yeah. And so I think everyone has always done that. But I would say, if we're looking at how kids have changed, one is just people aren't outside very much anymore, right? So back when I was coaching football, back when I grew up playing football, like we were outside all day long. We were acclimated to the heat. We were used to it. So we were in the Oklahoma heat. And then, we could jump in. We did 3-a-days and things like that. We'd have like 2 weeks of 3-a-days. Well, now like they don't even get to have 2-a-days and they don't get to start until like school has started. Which is probably a good thing though. Now our football programs, they work really hard in the summer and kids are outside some, but some of it's safety. Kids you can't go ride your bike for 8 hours in the day like you used to be able to. I mean, there's a lot of wild people out there, right?
Yeah,
You want your kids protected. The kids just aren't outside as much. So it's a little bit different. Overall, you got to look at, and Justin and I were kind of talking about this before we started recording, but sports specialization. A lot of kids specialize a little earlier now. Or the other thing, even if they're playing a lot of sports, it's like it never ends, right?
Yeah.
And we're in the same situation. So I have 4 kids, and I have 2 boys that are 4th and 6th grade. So looking at them, like they play travel soccer. And so we play in KC every single weekend, practice here in Topeka, but we're in KC. So they're playing in the fall and they're playing in the spring. And then they go from fall soccer directly into indoor soccer in the wintertime. They both play basketball, which is kind of weird with me being a wrestling guy. Okay.
These are your sons?
Yeah, these are my sons. They both play indoor soccer and then they go right into basketball. So, on the weekends, it's like they got like this game, then that game, or they have like during the week time, they're at soccer practice and they're directly to basketball practice. And then right now in the spring, it's soccer and flag football. And so, we're looking at our schedule and it's like almost every single night, and lots of kids are that way.
Yeah.
So you'll have kids that are coming in and they're playing a fall sport, but in the evening, they're still going and doing pitching lessons. They're still doing batting lessons, or it's just a lot. So I think that's something that used to, like you had a season. When that season was over, you move to the next sports season. That season's over. And you have some people that maybe didn't do all like 3 sports or just did 1, but now it's like everything just overlaps so much and they're constantly going. And I think this is a big thing. Kids don't have free play anymore. Think about and you could probably still do this. It just doesn't happen. But you could give a group of kids a ball. Even if they didn't know rules, they would come up with the game.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Whether it was in a field or if it was in a driveway or whatever, they would come up with the game.
The cul-de-sac.
Yeah. And now that doesn't happen because everything we do is so organized.
Yeah.
So we've taken away the ability of kids to just be creative and have fun. And so I know for us.
And collaborate with each other too.
100%.
Like they're having to figure out how to work together without a parent.
Yes. So in PE, whenever we do activities, I like to give the kids, this was middle school PE, but like a lot of autonomy. And so I would tell them, hey, like you guys need to figure out like what are strategies to this game? I know you just learned this game, right? What are the strategies and be able to work together and things like that? But wrestling practice, I think, is a good example of this with my high school wrestlers. Early in the season, the first few times that we say, hey, we're going to have open room. So we come in, we're doing everything structured and like, all right, we're going to do 10 minutes of open room time. And the first time I maybe just go 5 minutes, work on whatever you need to work on. You'll literally just see kids looking at you with like deer in the headlight eyes. What do I work on? And
tell me what to do.
100%. And so, I'll tell them, hey, sometimes we're going to walk around and have specific things. I got to see you compete on Saturday. I made notes. I know what you need to work on. But the first couple of times, I want them just to figure it out.
Yeah.
Hey, work on what you think you need to work on.
Yeah.
And then once they do that, and then again, we'll start trying to, walk around. Late in the season, I can be like, hey, open room time. And they're just on it. They're already working on things they need to work on.
Yeah.
They kind of got it figured out. And so
they're probably already planning too. Like when we get open room, I need to work on this thing.
Yes.
So
yes. But at first they were like, you need to tell me what to do because every coach tells me what to do.
Wow.
So I think that's a big thing.
Are you familiar with Jonathan Haidt? Haidt. I don't know how you say his last name. He's a psychology guy. He talks a lot about like trying to return parents to some of that free play. A lot of the like millennial parents specifically are like, you know, not just helicopter parents, but like lawnmower parents, you know, where they're like, I will remove every obstacle in front of you, you know, and hovering and like any playtime with a child is with a parent directly. And you're like, hey, these kids need to be outside with their friends without you there.
Yeah.
Because they don't know how to resolve conflicts because you resolve the conflicts for them. And they don't know how to collaborate, and they don't know how to, like what you're saying, come up with ideas and things, because it's just like, well, mom or dad, they'll do it for us. And he's really trying to like analyze, and you know, he comes from a psychology background, so he's analyzing like, hey, I think a lot of the rise in anxiety in like college age kids is because now they're out on their own and they don't know what to do.
Yeah.
They don't know how to organize their time because someone's always done it for them. And so I think that's really interesting that you're seeing that as well. What would you say, like, what are some other results of like the over-scheduled, you know, you're saying like one of the big changes is kids are like so scheduled with multiple sports. Why is that? Why do you think parents are scheduling their kids more and things like that?
I think there's a few things. One is, and again, we try not to get caught up in it because I know these things, but it is, okay, if I don't do all this stuff, my kid's going to fall behind.
Oh, so like fear of,
Yes, the fear like they're going to fall behind and then they're not going to get the opportunities that these other kids that are involved in every single thing, you know, and it's just simply not true. It's simply not true. So if we look at studies, and I was telling Justin this earlier, like most people that make it to a professional sport or the Olympic level or some sort of professional level, a lot of times they did not start playing that sport till they were like 12 to 14 years old.
Wow.
So it was one of the sports that they found or discovered late. Okay. Also, if we just look, I mean, you could take somebody and start them in a sport when they're 6, 7 years old, or start a kid in the same sport when they're at 10 or 11, then catch up pretty quick because cognitively and just as far as coordination, they can catch up faster. Right. And so they're able to do that. But you feel like, okay, well, I can't get on this select team if my kid's not playing. And so therefore here in 2 years, they're not going to have a chance to be able to play at the higher levels. So I think that's one of the things.
Do you think that's legitimate? Like, is that real, or it's more just a fear in our minds?
I think it's more fear in our minds.
So you're saying even if a kid, like in today's actual like sports climate, they could not start until like 8th grade, and they would still, if they have athletic ability, they could be fine.
Yeah, and it would depend on the sport, I would say.
Yeah.
But we've had a lot of success with wrestlers who didn't start till pretty late. Now the problem is sometimes it was not until their junior and senior year they're finally caught up and they're able to do well.
Well, even the guy you were talking about that went and played in the NFL, right? Like he didn't start football till pretty late. Isn't that what you said?
Or he started wrestling late.
Or you saw, okay, he started wrestling late, yeah.
And then, we had Aspen Kimmick, same thing. Aspen was around that same age, started wrestling in the 8th grade, did like a 5-week middle school season, no youth club, came in. So his freshman year in high school was like his first true year, 4-time state placer, ended up placing in Fargo, which is the biggest freestyle wrestling tournament for a high school kid, ended up being a college All-American, you know, and he had wrestled for 4 years in high school. That was it.
Wow.
So, you know, but there are sports, and let's say like a skill sport, you know, baseball.
Yeah.
Like you're probably going to need to develop some of those skills at an earlier age. Saying that, does every kid need to have private batting lessons and private pitching lessons and all this stuff? Probably not. A lot of those kids just get burned out and tired.
Wow.
And so one of the side effects I think that happens, again, I'm not saying that you shouldn't start a kid young, but maybe we don't have to be as crazy about like just constantly have them going or trying to do all the extra stuff. If they're going to figure it out, they're going to figure it out. And that's another thing too, is having that internal drive.
Right. Yeah.
Because if you as a parent are
They
always
gotta want
pushing,
it.
they got to want it. And studies show that, right? And if I'm the one always making them do that, eventually they're going to push back against that.
Yeah.
If they want to do it, they're going to figure it out. And what's cool is like some kids, like I've had high school wrestlers do this where this kid's wrestling as a freshman, a sophomore, a junior, and like just kind of there, just kind of one of those guys we're talking about, just kind of in the room. And all of a sudden, like something just flips in them. And then next thing you know, they're like one of the hardest workers in the room. And they're winning matches. It's like they had a different, I don't know, it's like maturity hit them all of a sudden, right? So I think when a kid really decides that they want it, and this would apply to every area of life. If I really want to be a great artist, I'm going to put time into it. If I want to be great at playing the piano, you can force them to do it. So it's kind of like as a coach, you know, I could fear somebody into doing something. Like, you do this or else you're doing, like, well, that's only going to last so long. That's like a really short motivational window. And then you're going to become white noise in the background. Okay. But if a kid wants it, sometimes you almost got to pull them back.
Yeah, it's so good.
Which can be a scary thing too, because sometimes parents will say that, well, my kid wants to do this. I'm like, yeah, but, and I heard this from a great Division I wrestling coach that I'm good buddies with. And he said these exact words. Yeah, but your kid also wants to wake up in the morning and eat a Snickers bar.
Yeah.
You let them do that because that's what they want.
Yeah.
Right?
He wants to drive 150 miles an hour.
Yes. So there are times where, like, even if a kid wants it, has a lot of drive, you have to pull them back a little.
Right.
Or as a coach, I got to figure out how to
teach
do that
them.
sometimes. I got to be like, all right, here's guardrails. And all right, hey, I love it that you're coming in a little early before practice. I love it that you're staying after practice, but we actually got to back you down a little bit, right? Because you're burning your body up right now. So, and then
like teaching them how to not get injured and things like that.
And that's the other thing I wanted to move into is when we're doing all these various sports, especially as you begin to get older, you have to be very intentional about rest and recovery. And that's something we didn't know, you know, even 10 years ago, near as much about.
Wow.
So it's something we're making sure we're teaching our athletes all the time. Control the controllables. What are the things you can control? Your effort, your attitude, your aggressiveness. But like, what are the physical things you can control? All right, I should be getting 8 to 10 hours of sleep. Right? Well, what's that look like? What time? If here's the time I'm going to, get up, I have to get up for school. So let's go backward. What time do you need to go to bed?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then what does your pre-sleep routine look like? Are you on your device? Are you playing a video game? Are you still like mentally just jacked up and excited when you lay down and now you can't sleep for the next hour? So you end up scrolling on your phone more, right? So having good sleep hygiene, controlling that, because if I don't sleep well, my body won't recover well. I can't think as well. Therefore, I'm not going to practice as well. I'm going to struggle in school. Becomes a negative cycle.
That's so funny you said that. I was asked the other day by someone, what's something I have bought that I would have spent more money on than I did? And my answer was my Kindle. I bought a Kindle for the sole purpose of it to replace my scrolling on social media right before bed. And it completely changed my pre-sleep routine, which changed how early I get up in the morning.
Wow.
Because, I kept struggling over and over, and I just chalked it up to I wasn't disciplined, that, I can't get up in the morning and work out. I don't, I sleep in all the time. And I just thought I just sucked. And then I don't know why it hit me. It was like, maybe you don't suck. Like, yeah, you suck, but maybe we can do something about that.
Yeah.
And so I switched from scrolling to reading my Kindle, and it just puts me to sleep. So I'll start reading at like 10 o'clock at night. And it's nice. I mean, there's not as much blue light on it, but there's just not as much dopamine hits that I'm getting.
Is it one of those like paper looking texture things?
Yep. It's
what is that called?
It was the
Paperwhite.
Paperwhite version.
Paperwhite. Those are so cool.
Yes.
Cool.
And I think there's still some blue light that comes from it, but it's not nearly as much.
Oh, it's not nearly
as much. And I noticed a huge change in not just my sleep routine, but just my productivity and, in business and life, because I was getting up so much earlier. And so I told
your sleep
someone,
quality probably went up too.
Yes. And so I told someone, I was like, I paid $120 for that Kindle. I would have paid $1,000.
Wow.
Like just the way it changed my, so that's super important.
Well, that leads right into another issue that I think this generation's dealing with. Man, attention spans are getting shorter and shorter, right? And think like, if you get up in the morning and the first thing you do is check your phone and you're scrolling social media, you're just, like you said, dopamine hits, and it's false dopamine, right? Yep. If I go work out, I'm getting a real dopamine.
Right.
If I put in good work for something else, I'm getting a real dopamine hit. Now I'm just getting those little hits all the time, right? And my brain's just seeing a million things. Now, and I know even for me, if I do that, it's hard for me to focus back in.
Oh, yeah.
So, and kids are just getting on doing that. They're doing it in the morning when they wake up. They're doing it before they go to bed. And so years ago, I wrote a blog. And I was like, okay, I'm going to keep it like under this number of words. Okay. So I wrote a blog. Then I ended up writing a book. And I was like, so I read a book that Cody Foster had given me, actually. I remember reading that book and thinking like, man, if I ever wrote a book, like this is the format that I want. And again, it was like, you don't have to have a long attention span.
Right.
It was every chapter was like a different lesson. There were some guiding questions at the end. Every chapter was like 3 or 4 pages long.
Yeah.
And it was a leadership book. But so when I wrote my book, that's kind of how I did it. And I was like, okay, I want this to be like an airplane book where like you could read it, get off and you don't have to go back like a week later and like, oh, where was I at? Because the next chapter is something totally different.
Talk to us a little bit about your book.
Yeah.
We didn't even mention that, but I forgot you did that too.
It's been a long time ago. So,
yeah, talk to us about that.
Yeah, so Game Changing Moves is the name of the book. And really like that was written for a couple reasons. One is I've had some tremendous coaches in my life who've given me guidance and wisdom. I wanted to be able to share that. And I don't want it to get lost, right? I want other people to get to learn those lessons. I want my own children to get to learn those lessons. Also, when I was mowing, and this is something I think is really important. So I had a lot of people I mowed for, but in particular, there's some people that stand out. And there were some elderly women I mowed for. And I knew, like when I go mow their yard, okay, so one of them was like Miss Wade, she lived right down the road from me. When I mow Miss Wade's yard, that has to be the last yard of the day. Because Miss Wade is a widow, she's elderly, she's lonely. When I get done mowing, what is she going to want to do? She's going to want to talk. So I would go mow her yard and be, again, last one of the day. It was the same thing. I would knock on her front door. She had 2 chairs on her front porch. I would sit in the chair.
Wow.
She would walk out with 2 glasses of ice and 2 Dr. Peppers. We'd crack them open.
That's cool.
And then we'd sit there and talk, right? Miss Coffee was another one. Miss Jackson was another one. And they would just pour into me. Now at the time, and they were all strong believers, and I was not a believer at the time.
Wow.
Okay. At the time, I would just be like, oh man, like I just want to go home and get a shower. I'm so tired. And I want to go out with my buddies.
Yeah.
You know? But I also had a heart for my elders, and I was like, I want to stay here and be respectful and listen.
That's cool.
Okay. And then now looking back, I'm like, man, they taught me some incredible lessons. So I want to be able to take these lessons I've been taught and put them in the book. That was one thing. Another thing I want to be able to do is take those same lessons and back them up with scripture. So every chapter has guiding scriptures that connect to that chapter. And then it has guiding questions where you can go in, you can answer these questions and how do these lessons apply to my own life. So that's why the book was written or how it was written. And I do a lot of speaking. So it opened up more doors for speaking, which was awesome. And really, it opened up just more doors for relationships.
That's cool.
So that was a big thing too. I knew nothing about the book writing process, so which is funny when you're doing that because it's also how God works and how just so many people are interconnected. But when I had started blogging, I was doing a lot of leadership stuff, and I had a few people tell me, "Hey, you should write a blog." And I'm like, "I don't even read blogs. Like, I could write a blog." But then I started writing blogs, and I would just put them out on Facebook. And they would do real well. And I would be like in the most random places and somebody didn't even really know would come up like, hey man, that blog was awesome talking. I was like, oh, that's cool. So, okay, maybe they're making a little bit of an impact. And then when I wrote the book, this was nice. So again, I'd met with Cody Foster, and Cody's a good buddy of mine, but I just said, hey, you're like the most connected dude I've ever met. You know anyone who has helped people write books? And he's like, oh yeah, I got a guy who's helped a couple of New York Times bestsellers. And then he connects me right away. So here's the funny sort of backstory on this. When I asked Cody this, I was not planning on writing a full-blown book. What happened was I'd been blogging, had some success in those areas. He knew what I blogged about. I had written a book called I'd written a couple page thing called The Christmas Chicken. I came home from wrestling practice over Christmas break. My family, they do it every year. They're making sugar cookies and they're using like Christmas cutouts, right? So there's a Santa Claus, there's a Christmas tree, there's a cross. They're making those. And then we had a chicken that did not belong in the set. My son Luke at the time was like 4 or something, and he wanted to make the Christmas chicken.
The Christmas chicken.
So my wife tells me that when I get home, I'm laughing. I go down to my office and it just hit me. So I wrote a story about the nativity scene, but from the perspective of the animals.
Okay,
It was from mainly the perspective of this chicken that was in there, right? And so I wrote that, and it was just literally for my children. I brought it upstairs and I read it. And then when I got done, Lori was like, that might be the best thing you've ever written.
Wow.
Which was kind of like, dang, I write all these blogs and stuff. Maybe I'm not
I
very
actually
good at
tried the leadership stuff, put no energy into this.
Exactly. 100%.
That's so funny.
But she was like, I think this should be a kid's book. It should be published.
Oh, that's cool.
And so when I asked Cody that, I was like, okay, I'm going to try to publish this as like a Christmas, little kid's book. Well, I meet with this guy, and this guy is, hey, Cody tells me all about like these blogs you've been writing and all this stuff. I'm going to write a book about leadership and sports and all these things. So I'm like, I can't not tell this dude about the Christmas chicken. He's had like 2 or 3 like New York Times bestsellers, you know? And so I end up, when I leave that meeting, this was over Christmas break. He was like, I want you to have everything written and brought back to me by spring break. So your entire manuscript. And I was like, okay. He goes, I know it's not a long time and it's wrestling season. He said, but we need to put a deadline on it or else you won't do it. So I came home, told Lori, I'm writing a book and I have the next 3 months to do it. And I don't know how to write a manuscript. So I'm like Googling, how do you write a manuscript? What kind? Because I'm thinking if I'm going to give this to a publisher, like what font do I use? Like what format do I use? So I'm teaching myself all this stuff.
This is before ChatGPT.
Yes, 100%. So, and I didn't have Grammarly or anything.
Yeah.
And one thing about me is I'm a good writer, but I also grew up in Oklahoma, so I'm an Okie. So sometimes I also write in Okie.
Yeah.
I always say like, now I'm sure there's people in Oklahoma that can spell. I'm not one of them. Okay, I'm a real life thesaurus because I can't spell. So there's times I'm like, oh, I can't spell. I had to figure out a different word, right? And I'm like, if you grew up talking how we talked and then you learned how the word was spelled, you're like, there's no way it's spelled that way.
Right.
Like,
That's not a word.
Yeah. So that's kind of how I'm. So I wish I would have had Grammarly back then at least. But I had nothing.
You had the little paperclip in Microsoft Word.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I see you're trying to write a manuscript here.
Yeah. So this was good. Okay. Because I had the blog, I had data. And I could go and look and see which one of these have been open or read the most.
Oh, yeah.
Which of these have done best on social media.
Wow.
Which of these go in the construct that I'm looking for in this book, and which of these are outliers that don't belong in this book, right? And so I was able to put those things together. And so I kind of had a list. I'm like, okay, I can just take each of those blogs and I can put them in. They can be a 2 or 3 page chapter and formatted how I want. So I had not started the book. I sat down the first day of spring break, told Lori, you got the kids the next couple of days. And I literally put the entire book together, 235 pages in like 3 days. Now I had to go back and then write an introduction. Could not figure out introduction. I kept asking people, I kept coming up with all these title names and sending out people and like, oh, like this one. And they're like, oh, the title doesn't really matter as much. But I'm like, but it does.
Yeah.
Once I figured out the title, then I was able to write the introduction.
Right.
And then I took the manuscript to that guy. I was insanely nervous. I'm like, okay, he's going to tear this apart and be like, why am I helping this kid? And but we met back up and he said, this is really good. We need to get it out. And then he was like, you got to find a publisher. And I was like, okay, you help me do that. I don't know how to do that. And I sent out just in the wrestling world to a bunch of coaches I know and said, does anybody have connections to a publisher? This is like a full circle moment. So this guy that I know much better now, I only kind of knew of him then. We had met maybe once, emails me and says, hey, coach, I got a chain that kind of was sent around by some coaches. There's a guy in Nebraska that runs a company called Cross Training Publishing. They publish almost everything for Fellowship Christian Athletes. I think you guys would be able to connect. So I emailed that guy and he says, yeah, send me your manuscript. I send it to him. We get on the phone. We get off the phone. I walked downstairs. I told Lori, I was like, I think he's going to publish this book, but I'm not sure. Like, I don't know what the conversation we just had. Long story short, they ended up publishing the book. Got to go out. It was in FCA magazine. They got to go to all these different various places through FCA. And then now, of course, I work for FCA full time.
Wow.
So, yeah, so that's kind of how it came about. So that's a journey all in of itself. And then what you don't realize as an author, too, is you are responsible for almost all the promotion.
Yeah.
Know? So I had to learn how to like get on social media and promote. I had to learn how to utilize connections with people and things like that. So I learned a lot about promotion in that process.
Yeah.
I didn't make a ton of money writing the book. That wasn't the goal of it anyway. And it became an Amazon #1 bestseller. It was the #1 seller in wrestling. It was like top 5 in Christian devotionals for a long time, and wasn't meant to be a devotional, but it's kind of formatted that way.
Right. Yeah.
So anyway, but the #1 thing I learned is like, man, utilize your connections that are out there. You already know a lot of people that can really help you out. Don't be afraid to ask. And then sometimes you just got to jump in when you're not ready. So those were a couple lessons I learned from that book.
Wow, that's awesome.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I haven't heard that story. That is really cool. I've read it, but I've never heard the story.
If you had a parent in front of you that, had a 5-year-old and they hadn't started all of that yet, and, they had maybe some feeling like he'll have some athletic ability, and we don't want to waste that. What would you say is like the ideal, like if you could start over, this is the way you should do it, to not, overbook them too early, but still prepare them in an adequate way? What would you recommend?
Yeah. And I feel like because we have a sophomore and a senior, my daughters are, and then my boys are younger, I feel like we've done a pretty good job with the boys. I don't think we did a bad job with the girls either on this. But I reached out to a lot of coaches and coaches that had children and say, what's your perspective and thought process on this? How do we do this? I don't want to burn them out, but you also don't want them to miss out on opportunities. I say, get them involved, right? I'm going to use soccer as an example. My boys love soccer. There's lots of soccer around here. Throw them in like just a little rec league. Let them play. Now the problem, and this is a real problem, let's just say they play rec for 2 years. And then you realize, like, okay, they're not going to get much better like doing this because it's truly rec, it's truly beginners.
Yeah.
Okay. Then you have to kind of transition to like a tryout team where you go and try out and then they're going to play for that team. But I would say still do that. Still put them in those type of arenas, right? Wrestling, there's a lot of youth wrestling clubs around here. You could go put them in that. Basketball, you could play in a PAL league. Then you could move them up and go play at Sports Zone, those type of things. So I say still put them in those things. Let them do it. But don't, here, this is a big thing. It can't be their world, right? And this is something still that we talk about all the time. Something I still have to deal with is my identity is in Christ. My identity is not in success in sport, right? And I still deal with this because I grew up being a very good athlete. And I grew up putting a lot of my identity in my success.
Right.
And so when you are achieving and you're doing well, you're on top of the world. And when you don't do well, you just crash, right?
Yeah.
So even as a coach, I catch myself, I want sports to be a way that I can help kids become. So this is my favorite definition of a coach. A person who takes someone from where they currently are to where they want or need to go. Where they want to go, their desired outcomes or their goals, but also where they need to go. They don't know where they need to go. We're going to help them get there, right? So as a coach, it's one of my jobs. But I want them to realize like if you win a state title or don't win a state title, that does not determine your value. Okay. Now we put so much on outcome here in America, okay, in all of our sports. So that's something I think is really important to teach the kids. Hey, we're playing this, we're having fun, we want to develop and get better. But bro, dad, you're freaking out on the sidelines and your kid's 7 years old.
Yeah.
I have 5 or 6 kids that are wrestling in college right now from my high school team. We've sent tons of kids to go compete in college. I've never had a college coach call me and ask me, how did this kid do when they were 7? How did this kid do when they were 10?
Yeah.
They want to know, okay, coach, I've already researched and I see they're a high school state placer. Okay, that's great. I know they're a good wrestler. Tell me about their work ethic. Tell me about their personality. Tell me what kind of team player they are. Tell me about their family. Right? They want to know those type of things. What kind of student are they? What's their GPA? And a lot of times we've already given them those type of things. But those are the things that they're asking. So when you got a parent who is putting a lot of pressure on a kid, and I've seen, and this is something we constantly have to deal with, a kid that comes in who has done a lot of sport, but they are so afraid to make a mistake or so afraid to lose. And again, so I have this discussion with my parents. So I'm tying this all back into when you got a 5-year-old and they're starting, let them go play these things, but let them understand like it's play, it's fun. We're developing our skill sets. Later on down the road, it's going to get more serious. Let's still not take the fun out of it, even like at higher levels. And I tell kids, I say, go back to when you very first started wrestling or go back to when you very first started this sport. Why did you do it? How did you feel, right? Let's keep some enjoyment in it. But it gets so serious at such a young age right now. Don't let it do that. If you catch yourself freaking out on the sidelines, like, you better check yourself. Like, you better walk away, go breathe, do something, and realize, because perception's reality. Okay. So this is like a speech I kind of give a lot of our wrestling parents, and we're blessed. We have a lot of great parents. We really do. But I give them this speech. So I say, okay, listen, I know you love your athlete. We love your athlete. We all want your athlete to succeed, right? But perception is reality. So when your athlete does well or they win, if you're high-fiving them and hugging them and telling them they're awesome, that feels like love. If your athlete loses and you yell at them or gripe at them or you walk away and give them a cold shoulder and don't talk to them for an hour, that feels like a lack of love.
Right.
Now, outcome is tied to, does my mom or dad love me?
Right.
Now, like, man, I'm so afraid to make a mistake because if I lose or mess up, I'm going to get chewed out on the way home, or I'm going to get chewed out immediately, or they're not going to talk to me. They're not going to love me anymore.
Right.
That's a lot of pressure. Can you imagine, like, as a kid, like, that's what you're feeling, right? And again, mom and dad don't mean for that to be the case.
Right.
They love their kid.
Yeah.
But this is how the kid perceives it. So got to tell them, like, you have to make sure that you let them know, like, hey, I love you. I love watching you compete. Great effort out there. Those type of things. Maybe on the car ride home, because there's been several studies about that. Like for athletes, like the worst time is the car ride home. 'Cause that's when they're getting chewed out, right? They would rather stay with the team and not have to go deal with that.
Dang.
So
Wow.
it is let them bring it up and then have a discussion. Let the coaches coach, right? So when my kids play soccer, I don't say a word. One, like I didn't grow up playing soccer. I don't know a lot about soccer.
Right.
Have I learned? My daughter played for 9 years and my boys have now played for a lot of years.
Do you know what offsides is?
Yes. It took me a long time to figure
Yeah.
that out, man. It's so confusing. I was like, how's that offsides? But I don't say a word when my kids play, not a word. And if the team scores, whether it's my kid or somebody else, I'll clap just like everybody else. And I just sit there completely silent. Okay. Every now and then my wife would get all excited. And so sometimes I have to go, hey, they come put my hand in her leg, like, cause she's like coaching her kid on the field or something. She's like, oh, my bad.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
you get excited. You love your kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
you want them to do well.
yeah. So I saw this a few years ago. I thought it was hilarious. We're playing some team and this is like they're like second graders, right? And this kid, he gets burned a couple of times and he had a parent on the sideline that just kept yelling at him. He finally turned and he looked at, it was his mom and he was like, stop coaching me. That's not what my coach told me to do. I'm going to do what coach said to do. And like ran back out there, right?
Wow.
And I was like, man. And it was just at a tournament we were at. So I don't know who the team was or who the kid was or the mom, but I was like, man, that's good right there because like mom's got to realize like his coach is coaching him.
Right.
Let his coach.
Yeah.
So even if you knew, and again, I don't know about soccer, but even if you knew a lot about the sport, let the coach.
Yeah.
And then if you do know about the sport and you want to work with your kids at home, cool, work with them at home, right? We can play catch with the football. We can do some skills. We can, whatever it is. But it can't be everything, especially when they're little. And if it is everything, it's going to cause a lot of pressure. They're going to get burned out. They're not going to want to do it anymore, or they're still doing it, but they're not enjoying it. Right.
Yeah.
And again, we don't always enjoy everything. We talked about that feelings being fickle, but man, if I'm playing a sport and dedicating 4 months to it, hopefully I enjoy it somewhat. Hopefully I'm motivated and want to do this thing and not doing it because other people expect me to do it. So I think when we're looking at kids, those are big things. Let them know you love them, support them, give them opportunities. And then you also got to look at your family priorities.
Yeah.
What are our priorities? If missing church every single Sunday and we've had to miss a lot of Sundays because we're gone for our kids. So there's like, man, is that work for our family? Finances. Can I put this kid on this soccer team in this league? Can I put them in this volleyball league? If it doesn't work for our family financially, we just can't do it, right? I know you want to give your kid opportunities, but I promise you they're going to find a way if they want to be good.
Yeah.
So that's all there is to it.
I have a question before maybe we end up with some rapid fires. You read a lot, you consume a ton of wisdom, and you clearly just have a wealth of knowledge to share. What are some of the top books that you've read? And let's go 3.
Okay.
Because I'm sure you could give me hundreds.
Yeah. So my favorite author probably of all time is Andy Andrews, right? Andy Andrews is incredible. And I don't know if you guys have read his books, but it's funny because when he talks about his books, he goes, people don't like, he's a New York Times bestseller, but he's like, people don't know how to label my books. Some call them historical fiction, some put them in leadership, some put them in business. So he writes a lot of stories with historical fiction in there, but they just have principles of success.
Wait, did he do The Traveler's Gift?
Yes.
Oh, that book is amazing.
Yes. So my number one from Andy Andrews is The Noticer. And so there's 3 of them, right? I would put all 3 of those, but let's just go with the first one. The Noticer is an incredible book, and it's just all about like perspective. Okay. I would say woven within a great story. And it's one of those ones, sometimes you're reading a leadership book, or you're reading a deep book, and like you're getting value out of it, but like you can only read 2 pages at a time and you're just like, oh, I'm about to fall asleep, right? Yeah. So his books are like watching a movie.
Yeah.
It's almost like you're reading a fiction book where you're just like locked in and you're learning so much. So The Noticer is incredible. The Traveler's Gift is incredible.
So good.
Those are 2 really, really good books. I would say John Maxwell's, I believe it's called 16 Laws of Communication. That's a book in the last couple of years that has impacted me. So because I do a lot of speaking, and I also believe that communication is key in any sort of leadership. Now he gives a lot there about when you're actually speaking in public and things like that. But if you are going to run any sort of organization, or if you're going to have a great relationship with your wife, communication is key.
Right.
So that's a very, very good book. I would put that up there in the mix. The Men We Need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In
That's
the last year or so has been one of the better books I've read. So again, there's lots of books I could go, but I would just say like overall for me is The Noticer. And then the last couple of years, those are ones that have really stood out to me.
The Men We Need. Who wrote that?
It is Brant Hansen.
Brant Hansen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Brant
That
or
one's
Brant.
funny too.
Yeah.
He's a funny dude.
Yeah.
He is a great writer.
Yeah.
Does I'm trying to think of the concept. It came from you. I think you read it somewhere. The 2 chairs concept.
Yes.
Is that a book?
Yes. Okay. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yes.
Bob Bodine. If you guys don't know who Bob Bodine is, go look him up. I love this dude. So a long time ago, through a different business opportunity I was in, we were down in Texas, and I got to hear Bob Bodine speak at this leadership and business conference. And he was incredible. And so he wrote a book called The Power of Who. And that book it blew up. It did real well. So here's the cool thing about Bob Bodine. It's a name that a lot of people don't know. But he has a company, I think it's called Bodine and Eastman. He is sort of a headhunter, and like his job is if University of Alabama, and he mostly does sports, if they need a new head football coach, he is the guy they go to. So he's the guy that put Deion Sanders in Colorado. He's the guy that put Bud Selig in Major League Baseball as the commissioner. Like he is behind the scenes on all kinds of cool things. So I got to hear them talk about the power of who, and just a real quick synopsis of that. People say like, okay, there's 5 degrees of separation or 6 degrees of separation or whatever. Power of who just basically says, and it's like I was talking about in my book, everything you need to be successful is probably right around you.
Wow.
Your friends, so you have like true friends, then you have like acquaintances, and then you might even have people on the outside who are willing to help you. They're a fan of what you do and you don't know it. They can help you succeed. So Bob wrote that, and then he wrote 2 chairs. 2 chairs is an awesome concept, and I've been re-implementing this in my life just recently. So what 2 chairs is having a conversation with you and God. You literally pull up a chair when you're praying. That's God's chair. This is your chair, right? Because I know I'm very guilty of this. I try to pray throughout the day various times, but let's just say I'm doing some morning prayer. It might be a sort of a rote morning prayer, like giving God a little thanks, praying for my family, whatever, and then I'm out, right? I'm on to doing the next thing, and I don't sit and listen to God. And so I did this pretty well for a while. Like everything else in life, like you need to have consistency, right? If you do it a couple of times, you're creating a habit. If you don't do it a couple of times, you're creating a new habit, right? I got away from it. So the week before the state tournament, I text Bob. I now have a personal relationship with them. So through my podcast, I had written out, here's all these people I want to bring on the podcast. And I haven't done my podcast like a year and a half. So, but I'd been doing that. He was on kind of the wish list. I don't know Bob in person. I've just heard him. I've read his books. So I reach out to him on Instagram, send him a DM. He doesn't follow me. I follow him, right? So it's just going to go to request and say, I would love to have you on my podcast. He writes back and says, let's do it. I'm like, what in the world? Okay. So gives me his phone number. We get on the phone and then we schedule it. We end up, and we're Zooming. So we talk for 30 minutes before we start recording. And Bob says, you know what? I don't do this for a lot of people. And he goes, I don't know why. When I read your message, he goes, something in me just said, do that podcast.
Wow.
It's like, all right, cool. So we do this amazing podcast. Like he was awesome. We get done. He stays on for like an hour and just pours into me. I'm talking like, if you meet Bob Bodine or you talk to him, you'll walk away he is the most energetic, going to pour into me. I mean, like I was like, I had to go work out for 3 hours after talking about it. It was
so
like,
hyped. Yeah,
so hyped. He's one of those guys. We're getting off of the Zoom. Again, he's just been pouring into me. This goes back to the power of who. So he's like, I got a lunch here in like 30 minutes. And it's a guy I meet with every single Thursday. And I'm like, oh, really? He's like, yeah. He's like, it's this guy, Tanner Gardner. I go, what? He says, Tanner Gardner. And I said, remember earlier I said, the wrestler for Stanford?
Yeah.
So Tanner at the time was an associate athletic director at Rice University. That's where Bob lives down there. I have no idea he knows Tanner. Tanner doesn't know that he knows me now, right? The power of who? Like he goes, it is less than 6 degrees or 5 degrees of separation.
Yeah.
And he had literally just been talking to me about that. And then he's like going to lunch with Tanner.
That's funny.
Who I spent years training in wrestling.
Wow.
Right? And like, what in the world? So couple weeks ago before our state tournament, I'm like, and I'm nervous as a coach, man. Like I know the potential our team has, and as a coach, I try to be a real source of confidence for my athletes. Calm, cool, collected confidence, right? Feelings and the way you feel is contagious. If you're nervous, they're going to get nervous, right? So even when I am a little bit nervous, I don't want the kids to feel that, right? So I want them to be around me and be like, I can go out and crush anybody, right? When I'm standing around Coach Parks, I want them to feel that way. So, but behind the scenes, sometimes you're worried about things, right? So I text Bob, leaves me a voice message, gives me some great advice. We ended up getting on the phone talking for a little bit. And then we're texting again. And he was like, 2 chairs, like go and talk to God about this stuff. Go and ask him, God, what do I need to do? Right. And I was like, I've not been doing that. So I since then have. And, he was like, and actually just did a little Instagram reel the other day on this, but we should be like, you can feel energy, you can feel passion in people, right? Like when somebody's passionate about something, maybe it's Legos. I don't know. It could be the most random thing. I don't like Legos, but if you're passionate about Legos, like I like hearing you talk about it.
Right.
Like, it's just like, oh man, you're into it, right? But at the same time, like if we're going to put energy into stuff, we have to refill. We got to put gas in your car, right? If our battery's running low on our phone, we got to charge it. So I've really been dedicating time in the morning to have a chair pulled up on the other side of my desk,
so good.
praying, but then stopping and listening.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how much more recharged I feel walking away from that than whenever I don't spend time listening to God. When I just pray and run, right? Now it's like pray, spend time, actually ask God, what do you want me to do today? Psalm 90:17, okay, talks about the favor of the Lord, but it says establish the work of our hands. If I, let the favor of the Lord be upon us, establish the work of our hands, says it twice. Yes, I want God's favor, but I also want God to establish the work of my hands, right? Yeah. So I can ask God, what do you want me to do today? And then let him establish it before I step out. So that kind of re-energizes you. Anyway, all that goes back to the 2 chairs and the Power Who was all written by Bob Bodine. A lot of wisdom in that.
That's so cool. It's been years since we've connected, but when I sit down in the morning to pray, I do that.
No way.
Sometimes it's not like I go grab a chair from the kitchen and put it right in front of me, but sometimes I'm sitting on the couch and I'm like looking at the other side of the couch.
Yeah.
It's like that's where the Lord is in this conversation. And it's so hard to sit and listen, but man, so many people pray, and myself included, especially in a world where we're so rushed and trying to go on to the next thing. I got to spend my time with the Lord. That way I can go do my thing. It's like, taking time to just listen. It's so powerful.
It is.
It's so good. Yeah. It reminds me of Martin Luther, famous said, I have so much to do today. I need to pray for at least 3 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like we miss how much we really get from that, Cool. Yeah. It's so good. Man, well, this was amazing. This was so good. And we probably could keep going for 2 more hours. Honestly, this was so good. But we like to end with a few rapid fire questions and just kind of, just impulse response. First thing that comes to your mind. What's a favorite restaurant in Topeka?
I would say overall, I'm going to go probably Iron Rail.
Iron Rail, let's go.
Yeah, although I love Mexican food, and we have so many good Mexican food places in Topeka.
Yeah.
But I don't necessarily have a favorite on Mexican food. Cool. So.
All right.
How many potholes did you hit on the way over here today?
Man, 27?
27?
Yeah.
On the low side?
On the low side.
Your odometer rotates every time.
Yeah. I spend a lot of time swerving.
Yeah. Are you a coffee guy?
Not really, but I am a caffeine guy.
Okay. Do you have like a coffee shop you go to or a place you go to?
So, it's one of those things like with the FCA, I get to go have coffee with people.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't know, man. So I don't even know what the name of it is. Right across from Washburn University, there's a little coffee shop right there.
Coffee bar?
Yeah. Coffee bar.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I like to go to the coffee bar because a lot of times I do a lot of work with Washburn University students and their football team and stuff like that. So I'll just go directly across to the coffee bar. That's a good one. Yeah, I don't have a consistent.
Wait, so what do you mean you're a caffeine guy? Are you like energy drink guy or?
So for years I took Spark, which was from Avocare. And so it's like a mental focused energy drink. I switched up, and there's a company called X Endurance, and they have a product called Focus, and I love that product. So Alpha GPC, and I'm also a nutrition nerd, but Alpha GPC and caffeine and B vitamins. Anyway, so when I wake up in the morning, I drink a product called Zill from a whole different company, and then about 10 minutes later, I drink X Endurance's Focus. I probably consume right around 400 milligrams of caffeine a day, sometimes maybe closer to 5, but usually 400. It helps me focus so much. And I know that this is why I very first started drinking Spark. But when I was 19, I got introduced to Spark, would drink it like for athletic purposes, but started realizing like, okay, I'm 2 pages into this reading assignment or this book, and I can actually remember what I read. Whereas my whole life it had been like 2 pages in, I've already forgotten, was thinking about 12 other things, had to go back and start at the beginning. Then I realized like for me, caffeine, it really benefits mentally.
What's your opinion on Celsius, the energy drink?
I don't know. So I have this immediate, because I do love nutrition, I just have this immediate, and my daughter drinks Celsius, some of those other drinks. I don't drink anything out of a can. I just feel like if it comes in a can like that, it just probably can't, it might have good nutrition. I don't know.
Wait, so what do these other ones come in?
It's powder form.
Oh, so you put it in water?
Yeah, I throw it in water, So I just throw it in like a shaker cup, shake it up and down.
Gotcha.
And so I just feel like, okay, if it's going out to the mass public and if I can get it at like the gas station, it probably doesn't have the greatest nutrition in it.
Right.
And so that's why I don't personally, and I've literally never had one. I don't know what a Red Bull tastes like. I don't know what a Celsius tastes like. Going back to the old school or going back to the newer.
White Monster is apparently the new thing.
Yeah.
Really? Yeah, I don't know anything about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
well, Chad Park's not approved. So,
well, this reminds me.
Quit.
This reminds me of a story. Do you guys remember when iTunes, like all of your music was listened to through iTunes? And when I was in college, this dates me, but when I was in college, I heard a story of it was a friend of a friend who was going to pull an all-nighter to finish some paper or something like that. And you know how college students would like use Adderall and stuff to like try to focus. Yeah. And so this guy was about to pull an all-nighter, takes an Adderall, and is like, while he's waiting for it to kick in, is like deciding what music he's going to play. And if you remember from back in the day, iTunes, it was like your library would be like all disorganized because you would like download things from LimeWire and the names would be all messed up and stuff like that. So he starts like correcting the names of the songs to like, organize it better. And he spends the next 6 hours organizing his iTunes library and doesn't do anything on his paper.
He was locked in.
Yeah. So it's like, man, brutal.
Cool. If you're doing a home project, you go into Home Depot, Menards, or Lowe's?
Home Depot or Lowe's.
My man.
Yeah.
Let's go.
We do need to start keeping tallies.
We do.
What is one thing that Topeka's missing? If you could bring something to Topeka, a restaurant, a thing to do, what's something that you'd bring?
Wrestling stadium.
Yes. So, no, I would say, and I think this is just because of where our kids are at right now, but not only, so I've talked to a lot of leaders in Topeka about these various things, okay? It doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense for us to invest a ton in like a lot of big time soccer because can we outdo Kansas City in soccer? Probably not. I mean, like our kids are playing at Garmin, they're playing, there's like 4 or 5 different complexes they play at that are amazing.
Right.
But it would be really great if we had like a full blown soccer complex here.
Right.
So we didn't have to travel to KC every single week.
Yeah.
And, you travel to KC and you're playing and you play against another Topeka team.
Right.
Or same thing with my daughter when she's doing travel volleyball. She's playing all these different places. There's no big place for us to play volleyball here. So it'd be cool if we had some sort of sports complex. And I love Sports Zone. It's just way smaller, right?
Yeah.
Right.
If we had something where we could host big tournaments and do things like that.
Yeah.
Just if you look at, and we're from the Shawnee Heights area, but like out at the lake, we have incredible baseball and softball out there. And you can see like in our school, incredible baseball and softball. And Seaman has good baseball. Everyone plays at the lake.
Yeah.
We're not having to go to KC every single weekend.
It's amazing. The facility there is incredible.
Yeah. So I would love to see something like that, but I don't know that it financially makes a lot of sense for the city or even private investors to do that. Yeah. When it's like, man, can we actually outdo KC in soccer? So maybe we should.
Well, I don't know if we need to outdo. Yeah. I mean, we just need something that's like workable. Yeah. I mean, because I think the lake is a good point. Like that's working and that's benefiting the city. So why wouldn't something in this other sports be similar? Yeah. Okay. I think maybe it's the last one.
Yeah.
Favorite date night? Like, what are you doing with your wife? Where are you guys going?
All right. This is so I would say we'll probably go out to eat somewhere, and I'm gonna ask Lori. She's gonna say wherever you want, right? And then so I'm gonna have to make the decision on that. So where we're gonna go out to eat, but
McDonald's.
No.
You said wherever I wanted.
So I'm probably going to go Mexican or someplace downtown.
Which Mexican place you going to?
Man, so I can't even think, and you might even know because it's over close to Justin's parents live like right across the street from me. So it used to be, it's right over by the old White Lakes Mall. I don't know what it's called now though. It was a different Mexican restaurant.
It was Carlos O'Kelly's.
It was Carlos
I think it's
O'Kelly's.
El Ranchito.
El Ranchito, okay. It's funny because like when I'm thinking about places to go out to eat, I'm typically thinking what's on the west side, what's downtown, right? I kind of forget about a place that's literally like 2 miles from my house.
Yeah.
But every time I eat there, I love that place. So that's it's awesome inside there. So that's a great date night place. So we would probably do that. I'm not a big fan of like going to the movies or anything, so you don't actually get to sit and talk.
Yeah.
And for us, having 4 children, having the opportunity for just us 2 to sit and talk is a great thing.
Yeah.
So that's probably what we're going to do. Now, this is funny, but there have been times where like and this is not a true date night, but you know this when you have a lot of kids or you're just super busy. Sometimes it's like, we're just going to go to the grocery store and shop. And we're just going to walk and talk and shop. And it's like, it ends up being almost ends up being a date night. Now, I am also a homebody person. So I would love to just sit with my wife and just watch a movie.
Right. And just
have
hang
a
out.
snack and just hang out.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. Love
Cool.
it.
Chad, thanks for being with us today. This is, we could have talked for 2 hours.
You guys asked great questions, so thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it.
It was an
Appreciate
honor,
you,
man.
man.
It's great. Excited about what you're doing in our city. And I mean, we didn't even get into FCA, which maybe that'll be part 2 someday.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. It's been awesome.
Where can people find you on social media?
So I try to make everything simple. So Coach Chad Parks. So if you're on Facebook, all of us old people, it's just Chad Parks. But on Instagram, it's Coach Chad Parks. I'm not a Twitter guy. I have one for our wrestling program, but not a Twitter guy.
Your TikTok account?
I actually do have a TikTok account. I hadn't been on there in like 4 years. So during COVID, this is like a little side thing. Like I'm a pretty good dancer.
Yeah, that's right.
I was about to make a joke about
I can
dance
break,
videos.
Yeah, I can break a little bit. So
I knew that.
Yeah, so my daughters got me to do a dance video with them. And then they're like, Dad, like you should do some more of these videos. So I did some silly videos over.
Heck yeah.
And then I actually literally took my TikTok off and I re-downloaded it like a month ago just because they kept sending me videos and I couldn't open them.
Yeah.
So I re-downloaded it to watch some of the funny videos they were sending me, my girls.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I just try to keep everything, the website, which was the old podcast, but everything is just Coach Chad Parks.
Cool. All right, man. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you guys.